class, today we're going to be reading another part of Roald Dahl's The Minpins. So in our previous part of the story, Billy was on the swan and they were trying to get the grunter to go towards a lake. So, this was the last picture. So you can see Billy on the swan. You can see the grunter smoke behind and they're going through the woods. Suddenly, right in front of them, on the edge of the forest, was the lake. The grunter, hurtling along right behind them, was interested only in the glorious human scent he was following. Swan flew straight towards the lake. It skimmed low over the water. The grunter kept going. Little Billy, looking back, saw the grunter plunging right into the lake, and then the whole lake seemed to erupt in a mass of boiling, steaming, frothing, bubbling water. For a brief moment, the terrible red-hot smoke belching grunter made the lake boil and smoke like a volcano. Then the fire went out and the awesome beast disappeared under the waves. Let's have a look at that picture. So you can see the smoke. Oh, have a look at that, the outlines of that grunter. A real ferocious monster. When it was all over, Swan and Little Billy flew higher and circled the lake for a last look. And suddenly the whole sky around them was filled with birds, and every bird had one or more Minpins on its back. Little Billy recognised Don Minnie riding on a fine jay, and he was waving and cheering as he flew alongside them. It seemed that all the other Minpins from the big tree had turned up as well to witness the great victory over the dreaded grunter. Every kind of bird was circling around Little Billy and the swan, and the Minpins on their backs were waving and clapping and shouting with joy. Little Billy waved back and laughed and thought how wonderful it all was. Then, led by Swan, all the birds and the Minpins returned to the home tree. Back in the tree there was a tremendous celebration for Little Billy's victory over the dreaded grunter. Minpins from all over the forest had flown in on their birds to cheer the young hero, and all the branches and twigs of the great tree were crowded with tiny people. When the cheers and the clapping had died down at last, Don Minnie stood up to make a speech. "Minpins of the forest," he cried, raising his small voice so that he could be heard all over the tree. "The murderous grunter, who has gobbled up so many thousands of us Minpins, has gone forever. The forest floor is safe at last for us to walk on. So now we can all go down to pick blackberries and winkleberries and puckleberries and muckleberries and twinkleberries and snozberries to our heart's content. And our children can play among the wild flowers and the roots all day long." Don Minnie paused and turned his eyes upon Little Billy, who was sitting on a branch not far away. "But ladies and gentlemen," he went on, "who is it we have to thank for this great blessing that has come upon us? Who is the saviour of the Minpins?" Don Minnie paused again. The Minpins in their thousands sat listening intently. That means when you're really, really concentrating and listening to everything they're saying. "Our saviour," he cried out, "our hero, our wonder boy is, as you already know, our human visitor, Little Billy." Cheers and shouts of "Hooray for Little Billy" from the crowd. Don Minnie now turned and spoke directly to Little Billy. So you can see here, there's Don Minnie giving him his speech to the rest of the Minpins. "You, my boy, have done a wonderful thing for us, and in return we wish to do something for you. I have had a word with Swan, and he has agreed to become your personal private aeroplane for just as long as you remain small enough to fly on his back." More cheers and clapping and shouts of "Good old Swan, what a great idea." However, Don Minnie continued, still addressing Little Billy. "You cannot go flying around all over the place on Swan's back in full daylight. Some human would be bound to see you, and then the secret would be out and you would be forced to tell your people all about us. That must never happen. If it did, crowds of enormous humans would come clumping all over our beloved forest to look for Minpins, and our quiet homeland would be ruined." "I'll never tell a soul," Little Billy cried out. "Even so," Don Minnie said, "we cannot risk you making daylight flights. But every night, after the light in your bedroom has been switched off, Swan will come to your window to see if you'd like a ride. Sometimes he will bring you back here to see us. Other times, he will take you to visit places more wonderful than you could ever dream of. Would you like Swan to take you home now? I think we can risk just one more quick daylight flight." "Oh gosh," Little Billy cried. "I'd clean forgotten about home. Mummy will be in a panic. I must fly." Don Minnie gave a signal, and in 5 seconds, Swan swooped down and landed on the tree. Little Billy climbed onto his back, and as the great swan spread his wings and flew away, the whole forest, not just the tree, but the whole forest from end to end, came alive with the cheering of a million Minpins. Swan landed on the lawn of Little Billy's house, and Little Billy jumped off his back and ran to the living room window. Very quietly, he climbed in. The room was empty. So you can see Little Billy there, climbing in. Little Billy, came his mother's voice from the kitchen. What are you up to in there? You've been very quiet for a long time. I'm being good, Mummy, Little Billy called back. I'm being very, very good. His mother came into the room with a pile of ironing in her arms. She looked at Little Billy. What have you been doing? She cried. Your clothes are absolutely filthy. I've been climbing trees, Little Billy said. I can't let you out of my sight for 10 minutes, his mother said. Which tree was it? Just one of those old trees outside, Little Billy said. If you're not careful, you'll fall down and break an arm, his mother said. Don't do it again. I won't, Little Billy said, smiling a little. I'll just fly up into the branches on silver wings. What rubbish you talk, his mother said, and she walked out of the room with her ironing. From then on, Swan came every night to Little Billy's bedroom window. He came after Billy's mother and father had gone to sleep, and the whole house was quiet. But Little Billy was never asleep. He was always wide awake and eagerly waiting. And every night, before Swan arrived, he saw to it that the curtains were drawn back and the window was open wide so that the great white bird could come gliding right into the room and land on the floor beside his bed. Then Little Billy would slip into his dressing gown and climb onto Swan's back, and off they would go. Oh, it was a wondrous secret life that Little Billy lived up there in the sky at night on Swan's back. They flew in a magical world of silence, swooping, gliding over the dark world below where all the earthly people were fast asleep in their beds. And you can see Little Billy with his dirty clothes and Mum with her ironing there. Oh, let's have a look at this picture. So can you see there, Billy and Swan flying in the air. Once, Swan flew higher than ever before, and they came to an enormous billowing cloud that was shining in a pale golden light, and in the folds of this cloud Little Billy could make out creatures of some sort moving around. Who were they? He wanted so badly to ask Swan this question, but he couldn't speak a word of bird language. Swan seemed unwilling to fly very close to these creatures from another world, and this made it impossible for Little Billy to see them clearly. Another time, Swan flew through the night for what seemed like hours and hours until they came at last to a gigantic opening in the earth's surface, a sort of huge gaping hole in the ground. And Swan glided slowly round and round above this massive crater and then right down into it. Deeper and deeper they went into the dark hole. Suddenly, there was a brightness like sunlight below them, and Billy could see a vast lake of water, gloriously blue, and on the surface of the lake, thousands of swans were swimming slowly about. The pure white of the swans against the blue of the water was very beautiful. I hope you enjoyed my story time, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday to finish off our story.